Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show. And as always, I'm thrilled to have you along for the journey, for the conversation. So if you would subscribe to the show, that would be awesome. It really helps us out, as well as not just on a podcast, but over on YouTube. The YouTube channel is still, getting a little bit more traction. We're trying to get up to 2,000 followers or subscribers there. So go ahead and subscribe on YouTube as well at Keys to the Shop. So that would be awesome. And if you love what we offer here at Keys to the Shop on this podcast, then I would encourage you, share these episodes, share a clip, share something, a link on Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you can, because the goal is, every coffee shop in the world, that's kind of a silly goal, like one of those audacious goals to think, hey, if you run a coffee shop on planet Earth, right, then you should know about Keys to the Shop. And the way we do that is through you sharing these episodes, because I'm not going to cold call all these people in the world. So anyway, thank you so much, all of you who kind of spread the good word about that. And I want to let you know, Keys to the Shop is more than just a podcast. It's also a consulting and coaching company. That's what I spend most of my time doing these days. In fact, on top of, producing the show, it's also about one-on-one coaching and consultation for coffee shop owners and operators who want to really build a thriving business that takes care of all the people, your staff, yourself, of course, and your community through excellence in operations, in quality, in culture. And depending on what you need, maybe it's you're starting a coffee shop for the first time, or you've been running a coffee shop and there are some things you've run into that are sticky problems that you need some help with, or just need perspective, an outside perspective of somebody who has been in the business for quite a long time and can help offer perspective and clarity for the next level of your business. That's what I offer through Keys to the Shop Consulting. So email Chris at keys-to-the-shop.com as we're onboarding new clients for 2025. Maybe this is something that would fit your situation perfectly. Chris at keys-to-the-shop.com will set up a discovery call and just have a conversation, kind of like we do on the podcast here. It'll be fun no matter what. So today's episode is brought to you by our great sponsors. First, we're talking about Ground Control at groundcontrol.coffee. This brewer obviously has been making the rounds around the world. It's really turning heads. And then also you've got the barista series from Pacific over at pacificfoodservice.com. Really great product. We're going to talk about both of these fine companies later in the episode. But for right now, I would love to just begin by introducing you to the topic and our guest today. We have a lot of connection in the industry. We talk a lot about different issues related to relationships and the trade of coffee across the value stream. We have players from the farm level to the consumer level, everywhere in between. And we've talked about this on the show with lots of different guests. But the beauty of the fact that we can have these conversations is that these platforms or the tools are available to us to have these conversations, and there are people out there who are really using their voice and the availability of tools and access to conversations and relationship building resources to make a world of difference, to make sure that when we have better systems in the future, they are not just based on the system itself, but it's also based on relationship and understanding and trust. And today's guest is all about that mission and is something that she is pursuing with her career, that equity, the relationships, and trust across the trades of coffee. We're talking with Beamlak Bekele. Beamlak has experience working as a green coffee export manager, logistics, and documentation supervisor, a quality control specialist, and she is the second place national barista champion of Ethiopia and is currently working as the project coordinator for IWCA Ethiopia. Now, she's been raised in a family that was working in the Ethiopian coffee industry for decades, and Beamlak is interested in is pursuing the learning of how to bring origin country perspectives to the international coffee community, and how to design gender inclusive and sustainable operations and systems in the coffee business, how to bring basically bridging all of these relationships through conversations, through innovation, and using the resources at our disposal to build a better future for all people involved, especially on the farm level of coffee. And most recently, Beamlak has just returned from being a kind of barista exchange participant with the Coffee Blacks program. They had this barista exchange that took place. You might have been following that. And, Bartholomew Jones, who was on the show recently, is the architect of that. And so Beamlak just returned from being stateside in the United States. And we're going to talk all about that exchange program here, but also, obviously, we're going to talk about Beamlak's development as a coffee professional from growing up in the coffee industry and now today, what she is working on, the why, the insights that she has for the industry, and all of the things in between. I think this is going to be a very encouraging episode. And again, this is a testament to the fact that we have these um, accessible platforms, like the communication and connection that we have between us and the rest of the value stream is very much available, so we can use it to create better versions and better relationships that are long-term beneficial relationships based on trust and the thriving of all people across the trades. So Beamlak is doing some great work, and I hope that you really enjoy this conversation. So here now is my conversation all about equity and building trust-based relationships with Beamlak Bekele. All right, Beamlak, welcome to Keys to the Shop. I'm so pleased to have you on the show today. It's really going to be a great conversation. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm back in Addis. Everything's going pretty great. How are you?
I'm doing perfect. Yeah, it's great fall weather out here. I've heard all about your, following Coffee Black and the exchange program you did with them out there, and now you're back home. How was that trip? I mean, it must feel like, you just got back. Like today's your first day back, right?
Yeah, almost 2 days. I got back on Friday, so almost 2 days now.
Might as well be one day. I mean, how do you feel after all that?
I feel like it was such a very compact, like a very compact trip. Like it was a very short period of time, but there was a lot inside of it. And so I'm trying to take it all in step by step as I'm back now. But it has been such an adventure and also an opportunity to see things, what things look like on the different side. I'm familiar with what things look like here on the producing side of coffee, but it was very interesting to see what the consumption looks like on the other side, and also just the roasting business, and also having the opportunity to connect with different baristas, just understanding how coffee is perceived from a consuming country. I think it's very different and was a great opportunity for me to understand what things look like.
I would love to return to that conversation, and we will later in our conversation. But you said you're very familiar with the way things work in the producing end of the supply stream, of the value stream. This is a family thing for you. Your family has been growing coffee for, I think, 20 years. So you grew up with this. How was your perception of coffee growing up? I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit different now, but growing up, what did it mean to you, and how did your perception start to change as you got older?
So with my family, we don't necessarily own our own coffee farm. But my father has been working as an agent for a big coffee importing company in Germany called Hakofco, and he had been working there for 20 plus years. He has retired now, but I think my dad was the person that first started the family's journey in in the coffee industry, and my mom followed up with opening her own coffee roastery. We had that running for a while. And my sister is also an agent, and my brother is a quality control manager, and my other sister is an expert manager. So I grew up perceiving the coffee industry in different levels. And so it was a very good opportunity for me to learn what coffee looks like, not just at the farm level, but also the different processes that it has to go through to reach consumers, because my mom was working on the roasting side, roasting coffee, and my dad was making sure that the quality was top notch, following up with documentations and logistics. And I have this memory of always looking at him at the laboratory, cupping a lot of samples. And also with my mom, I have memories of being in the roastery and having a lot of jute bags and me being tiny and jumping around the jute bags and also experiencing things on that side. And so I grew up with a different perception of coffee per se, from the consuming, the producing side. I think a lot of us here in Ethiopia are very like into and also always remember and attach coffee with the traditional coffee ceremony that we have. I feel very privileged to have had a chance not just to have the perception of the traditional coffee ceremony, but also to see what the intricacies look like in the coffee industry, with the different levels of the supply chain. And so those were my early upbringings in the coffee industry and how I got introduced to coffee. But I graduated as an architect and urban designer. I later on did my master's and my MBA, which are not very much related to coffee per se, but I think growing up with coffee and understanding coffee from such a young age has helped me. Also, I'm very grateful for my mentors in the industry, which have given me a chance to experience coffee in a different way.
So your familiarity with coffee in terms of how your family was involved, now your experience in I mean, it's literally something that's a part of the way that you think and breathe. But then you got this education in architecture and business. How do you connect those two now with this deep understanding culturally as well as professionally with that skill that you developed through your education?
I think being an architect gives you an opportunity to be in touch with your creative side, and I really appreciate that. We did a lot of graphic designs in architecture school when we did our 3D modeling and so on and so forth, but not just with the technicality of it, but in the approach that you present your stories, for example, within the coffee industry, or you approach in representing your brand in the coffee industry and having to build a relationship and an identity with consumers or with your clients in the coffee industry. I think being from that artistic side of the coffee industry has helped me, but also my MBA has helped me in the business side, in managing the supply chain, in understanding what relationships with suppliers look like, but also in managing my own team within the coffee industry, in managing projects, but also in the green coffee export sector. And so I think I've taken a bit of technical understanding and education to pour it into coffee. But I think most of my skills in coffee have gained one with experience and actually doing the different work that I'm able to do in the coffee industry, be it as a green coffee export manager, as a quality controller, as a documentation and logistics support person. And so I've had a lot of that come from the experience in doing it and also having the exposure to be in a family in a way that I was able to see other people doing it and gaining experience from that. And so I feel like, yes, my
Yeah.
education has helped, but the large part of it has been um, experiencing it and also taking different courses in the coffee industry that also help me like reach my vocabulary, my experience, understanding standards, and so on and so forth has also helped me to push forth in the coffee industry.
So when you first started getting involved professionally, was that in the import side or the not import, but the trading side of things in the green coffee analysis and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like your father's end of the business, so to speak? Was that the first stepping stone for you?
Yeah, my first experience, like ultimately in the coffee industry, was being a logistics and documentation support person, and then I started assisting in the laboratory with coffee control management. And from that, I had an opportunity to work with an expert company here to work as a green coffee expert manager, which helped me to leverage the connections that my family has built in the coffee industry and the networks, but also my understanding of documentation and logistics and quality control, but also in marketing and selling the coffee to importers.
Mm.
And so these experiences that I've had in the past, and also the connections that my family has built in the industry, and the name that my family had has helped me to connect more easily with agents here that are representatives of importing countries in different parts of the world, and also just in general to be able to have the confidence to know the product, but also to be able to sell the product effectively in the coffee industry.
There's a lot of knowledge of product in obviously your story, and then we have people around the world who study coffee. But then you mentioned the selling of coffee, and you've mentioned this also with regard to your education about branding or image and the communication of that image as a huge factor in how sustainable maybe something can be in terms of trade. I wonder if you'd speak to that a little bit and tell us how you have understood the importance of selling the coffee and how it might have evolved since your father's generation of working in coffee and now what you're doing and what you have done and what it looks like now.
I feel like a few years back, I think the specialty coffee industry has not grown as much as it has grown now. So coffee was more of a commodity, as it is now in some ways. But the specialty coffee industry was not as popular, as very rich. And so coffee had to meet a certain level of standards, and as long as it fit those standards, it was okay. You can tell a person that it's this the coffee is scoring this much, and I'm able to sell that for you, and it would have been fine. But right now, I feel like because the specialty coffee industry has evolved so much, consumers don't just want the product, but also want to understand where the product is coming from in terms of traceability, but also the
Yeah.
coffee story that's related to the product. And so right now, when you're selling coffee, you're not just going like, it's just this points of coffee, it would have this amount of effects, and we'll just ship it to you. But people want to know where the coffee is coming from, what kind of impact it has on the industry, especially on the specialty coffee side. Yes, there's still coffee that's being sold commercially, and people only actually just care about the product and want to know where that coffee is coming from, and make sure that they're paying the due diligence. But also, there are more people that are more curious in understanding where coffee is coming from, what impact it has in the industry, and also want to explore the potential of what good what good coffee quality is, and what good taste is, how far coffee can go in terms of experimenting. And so I feel like there's a very different consumer base, or like there's an evolution of how people want to consume coffee, or how people want um, coffee to be sold to them. Right now, it's less of a commodity in the specialty coffee field, and more of something that that you can connect the human experience with, and its contributions and its impact on other people and the environment, which I feel like it's something that has helped us advance the coffee industry and push it a step further into becoming more sustainable. Um, so yeah, it's very different.
How is it from the farmer's perspective? You have this perception of coffee that, hey, I want to know more about the coffee. I want the story. I want the deeper meaning of it. And, there's a lot of talk about how, we've got knowledge of who's growing the coffee, but sometimes the value doesn't make it back to the producer. And even though it's different, it might not be better. So I'm curious how you've seen it be maybe both, where there's this idea of, yeah, it's novel to know a lot about the farmer, et cetera, but in what ways has this consumer perception and desire translated to benefit for the farmer?
I feel like in some ways, I would say, there are people that practice this pretty well, not just as a marketing scheme or just something to greenwash people, but as something that's very impactful and has meaning. But there's also a part of the industry that actually uses this as a marketing scheme to get the right amount of money for their business, but not necessarily pay it forward. And I feel that just comes to ethics in the business, in the coffee industry, and how well you're able to do the business, not just as a profit means, or as a means to get foreign exchange, specifically in Ethiopia, but as a means to impact the farmers that you're working with. I say that people need to research where their coffee is coming from, in a sense that what kind of relationships they're building with producers. I think this requires an effort from importers' side to try to understand who they want to work with in the coffee industry, because I see there are a lot of people, specifically in the Ethiopian coffee industry, that are trying to do well for coffee farmers, and are trying to share their benefits and the profits that they get as they move forward and export the coffee. But there are also, like I said, other people that are not that are just using it for a marketing scheme. And I think importers specifically need to research and understand um, which part of the industry they want to affiliate themselves with and partner with, to bring a better impact. But also, I think something that I would say, also coming from IWCA Ethiopia and working there as a project coordinator, is that it's not just with the private sector that you're able to work with to make an impact. Definitely, yes, the people that give you the coffee deserve the actual benefits of the coffee, but there's also other ways of giving back into the coffee community by working with other organizations like IWC Ethiopia that prioritize the equity for women in the coffee sector in terms of sharing benefits and in terms of working together to make the coffee more sustainable and more equitable. And so not just importers, but also consumers could could work with organizations like this.
That's really interesting. There's two things there that I think are worth continuing to talk about here, especially the idea that there is the alternative things that sometimes people are like, are you trying to get out of doing good financially by doing good with charity organizations or cause based organizations? And of course, this is something not as a replacement for, but in addition to equitable and generous, paying it forward to the farmer. Talk a little bit more about the work you do there for equity. You've been on, I think, the board or an organizer with that organization for quite a long time. And I'm sure that it's really gained more momentum over the years. So, if you could talk a little bit more about what that organization actually does and how it's made a difference, that would be great.
Mhm. So IWC is International Women Coffee Alliance. It's an international group that has more than 32 chapter members that are both
Mhm.
from producing countries and also from consuming countries. So Ethiopia is one of the chapter members of IWCA. And the work that we do revolves around creating equitable access to coffee education, to coffee resources, but also provide platforms for women to be able to sell their products, and create platforms to create relationships with business owners in the coffee industry from the consumer side. And so the projects that we do revolve around, so all our memberships are from the different levels of the supply chain. So there we have farmers, coffee farmers that are members. We have cooperatives that are members, green coffee exporters, roasted coffee exporters, and also women coffee professionals. And so the trainings that we give are tailored to the different needs of each supply chain. So, for example, for farmers, we have trainings that are directly related to coffee in terms of post-harvest training. And also, women don't have the same access as men do in terms of considering coffee as a business, because a lot of their work is involved at the household, and they don't have as much time to connect with other coffee farmers to understand what the market pricing is, when to sell their coffee, and so on and so forth. And so we try to provide trainings that are tailored for them to consider coffee as a business by providing them basic business skills and also basic life skills. We use the family approach to make sure that, because coffee here is a family thing, so we make sure to use the family approach to consider their husbands or their older sons that are able to work in coffee, so that they're also part of the trainings and can gain experience from it. And for others in the coffee field within the green export and the roasted export, we provide trainings that are tailored into understanding what their product is in order to be able to sell it and what the value of their product is. So trainings that are related to SCA and also CQI in terms of sensory evaluation and green coffee evaluation and things like that. So these are some of the things that we do, but we also provide platforms. For example, last year we had the IWCA convention happening here in Addis that was able to connect women coffee producers, women coffee consumers that are importers in importing countries, and also that helped to create business relationships and to foster places where this business relationships can grow. The reason why I said coffee industries that are importers or other roasters could be able to affiliate with organizations like ours is because we don't just do charity work, but also provide platforms where actual business transactions can happen. And so if people, and we also help by being a third organization, just like certifications are for not justifying, but also providing links to farmers that are women that are doing good in the industry, that have good quality coffee, that could potentially be able to be connected to importers that also want that, but also be able to make an impact in terms of creating equitable spaces for women in the coffee industry, not just at the farm level, but also in places where there are bigger profits in green coffee exporting or just roasting and reaching the consumers, and also women that are working in the cafes. And so we provide that opportunity for people to actually come in and connect with coffee suppliers that are women so that they could create lasting business relationships that are doing good for the sustainability of the coffee industry in terms of equitability.
That's great. Yeah, the empowerment, the resourcing, the connectivity, the knowledge, it all serves to bring more long-term, you said long-term relationships and sustainable relationships, and rather than having maybe just one or two interactions with the consuming end or with a purchasing a company purchasing your coffee, it's something that can be, a true professional relationship. That is, I think what a lot of people are talking about today is the idea that we need to have long-term sustainable relationships across the value chain that are not just about novelty and then forget about you, we're just going to bounce around from one thing to the next. And it feels like there's more of that happening as organizations like IWCA does that work, or you yourself just advocate on behalf of farmers in Ethiopia. Do you see that evolving more, where there was this older kind of, you were going to buy coffee from this one place and it's going to be a commodity grade coffee, and it's just going to, we're going to purchase it all the time, but we have no relationship. It's and we're buying it for cheap. We're who cares how it comes to us as long as it comes to us consistently. And then in specialty there was this era, and still is there, where there was a lot of micro lots, a lot of bouncing around from farm to farm, but not really a lot of long-term relationships. It's almost like we were scared of that. But it feels like it's different now. Like people are really trying to develop these relationships. Do you feel like that's true, or is there a lot more work to be done there? Hey, everybody, it's Chris. I just wanted to take a moment today to talk to you a little bit about our sponsors. We're talking first about the Ground Control Brewer at groundcontrol.coffee. The Cyclops Brewer has been available for years now, and it's been making waves in the industry because of its SCA award-winning technology, allowing you to access flavors in your coffee that you couldn't with traditional batch brewing. It also creates extracts and concentrates for batch iced lattes, batch cold brew. The new brewer coming out is smaller, it's beautiful, just like the old one, and it's also got a 30% higher output of that concentrate feature, which makes it even more useful. It can fit in more places in your shop, lower MSRP. So there's a lot of different things that you could use this machine for in your cafe, not the least of which is a quality upgrade. So go to groundcontrol.coffee, reach out and learn more about this brewer. This could be the right brewer for you if you're looking for that quality upgrade as well as efficiency and flow in your coffee shop. Go visit them over at groundcontrol.coffee. And also the Pacific Barista Series. Now, the Barista Series has been a long-standing sponsor of Keys to the Shop, and I'm so grateful for them. They're wonderful folks. They've always supported the coffee industry, mainly with their products, of course. Plant-based beverages that perform the way that you want a specialty plant-based beverage to perform. It stands up to the heat from steaming, produces amazing texture for latte art. It also creates a balance in the flavor that allows the coffee to shine through. So this is perfect for people who are plant-based customers that want excellence. Go to pacificfoodservice.com and get samples and try it for yourself. And I think you're really going to be impressed. If you want the best for your plant-based customers, then I think you should try the Barista series from Pacific. Okay, everyone. Well, let's get right back to our conversation with Beamlak Bekele.
I feel like there's still a lot more work to be done to be able to create those trusting and long-term relationships between consumers and producers. But yes, there is a move. There is a step in the right direction where I see that some specialty coffee roasters or specialty coffee shops will always have a certain type of coffee available from a certain type of producer. But I think it still needs a lot of work because in Ethiopia, people are still there are a lot more people that are still trying to market their coffees to different agents, and sometimes a certain importer would buy their coffee and sometimes not. Another importer would buy their coffee depending on the price of the coffee. And 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 so I think there's still a lot more work to be done. I think there is more to coffee, like I said, than the physical qualities of the coffee. And I think that is something that would help build a relationship, a long-term relationship with consumers and producers to understand more about where the coffee is coming from, to understand more about their people, the people that are growing the coffee, and to have human relationships that are involved, not just the commodity. And I think that would be something to even help push farther long-term relationships with buyers and coffee farmers. And so I still think there's a lot of work to be done in that. But yes, there's a step in the right direction that some coffee roasters and some cafes still hold specific type of coffees that are from a specific type of coffee producer and still have them all year round and for different amount of years. And so, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like there's this connection to the greater industry. You mentioned the SCA earlier, and your own education and accreditations with coffee organizations. You're plugged into what's happening, and the SCA has recently released their cupping sheet related to their character evaluations of coffee, so attributes of coffee versus the more numbers based one, which a lot of still use. But I'm curious if this is something that is hopeful when it comes to the producing end of coffee. Where does this seem like a good move in terms of making more space for coffee from Ethiopia when it's based on these characteristics of coffee, not just the taste?
Hmm. I think because of the history of the Ethiopian coffee industry, I think Ethiopia is known for very exotic coffee flavors and very exotic type of coffees in the industry. And so I think it would take relatively a, a bigger amount of time for people to familiarize themselves with not just wanting coffee for its specific type of flavor or like for its score, but also for the wholesome understanding of the coffee and where it's coming from
Mm.
and the different contributions it's making to the environment, different sustainability aspects of the coffee that are doing well. I think it would take a bigger time, and also just as an industry, because people have been so familiar with the grading system that SC had put out previously with just the numbers. I think it would take a while to transition from that space. But I think it is a good thing uh, that people are now not just perceiving the physical qualities of the coffee, but also are trying to understand the value more than just the physical aspect of the coffee. And so I think that is important, and I think it's a good and I think it's a good step forward with the new valuation system of coffee according to the SCA. But I feel like it's going to take a bit more time, and I think it needs more advocacy and it needs a more push for people to actually be able to use it
Yeah.
in importers' laboratories or in roasteries or any place where coffee quality is being graded and evaluated. Um, but yeah.
Well, I'm curious about your own history in coffee related to connecting the trade of coffee to the end consumer, even in your barista work in Addis. You know, you have the you've worked as a barista for a time where you're connecting the consumer in country, of course, but then you've had a lot of outside of the country experience as well. I think there's I'm curious about how you have allowed or what evolved in your understanding related to trade of coffee when you started to really connect those parts of the value chain. um, did it create more gravity in the way that you looked at the numbers on the screen? Because there's so much safety behind a computer screen and over the phone when you're talking to somebody. You don't see the person necessarily, but when you meet them and when you serve them, it feels like there has to be something that transforms the way that you approach that work from that point forward.
Yeah. So I first got introduced to or was open to the idea of becoming a barista. I did this after I had the opportunity to become a green coffee exporter, after I had been managing projects for a while. I was actually inspired by my mentor and pushed by my mentor to be able, her name is Sara Yoga, and I was able to practice at her cafe to become a barista. And so at first it was a very novel and new thing for me. And then the inspiration came where I felt like a lot of the work here in Ethiopia in terms of brewing and being able to serve people is done by women. Traditional coffee ceremony is centered around women here in Ethiopia. But when you come to the professional aspect of it, you don't see a lot of women that are baristas behind the bar.
Oh.
It's not that common. It's usually men that have the field. And so I was very inspired to push it forward and also be able to compete at different national and also continental competitions. And that was the first reason why I got there. But as I did, I also work as a part-time barista at my mentor's cafe, Cherish Addis. And so I had the opportunity to connect directly with consumers. It's very new to me because when you're selling coffee as a green coffee expert manager, it's usually like the price is this, the quality is this good. What do you think? It's always about numbers and profit margins, and you're trying to make the right number and get the right amount of quality to make it through. But when it comes to the consumer side, it's usually people that are drinking coffee because they want to drink coffee, because they're interested and curious and want to experiment and want to know. It's a different approach where they're not calculating the numbers. It's a very um, human, like a human type of connection where you have with them. It's not theoretical, it's not number. People are interested in what you're about to serve them and they're willing to listen or to know more. And so it was a complete flip for me to be from the side of the industry at the back end where I don't necessarily deal with consumers, but people that are in the middle, but now being able to directly get a link with people that are willing to know more. And it's often surprising to me that people, once they're open to experiment and to understand and to try different type of coffees. And when you tell them about the back history of the coffee, they're usually interested to know. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're very open to learn. I think that's a very great thing that I see for the consumer side because at the end of the day, I feel like they're the ones that have power to change the way that the coffee industry is operating. Because at the end of the day, people, if they're willing to pay higher, if they're demanding more experiences from the coffee industry, if they're demanding a different type of space, a different type of beverage, I feel like it depends on them. And so to have that kind of connection with consumers helps to change, to have a rippling effect from the cafe to the roastery to the green coffee buyer to the one that's exporting the coffee down to the farmers. And so I feel like they hold a bigger leverage and a bigger power and are able to influence the coffee industry if they wanted to. And so I cherish my position as a barista and I cherish baristas in the coffee industry that are brewing coffee and that are serving consumers because I feel they hold the power to just with a simple conversation or just within a few minutes to be able to shift people's perception about coffee. And so I think it's a key place to be and also a place where you're able to make an influence and an impact in the industry. Yes, you can make it in different parts of the supply chain, but you can try to impact or influence the person that is better able to make decisions to have effects, rippling effects within the different levels of the supply chain in the coffee industry.
Yeah, that well said. And there's this mimetic effect where people start to do what other people do because it becomes either a trend or a movement where, there was a time when certain origins of coffee were more popular than others, and it wasn't because necessarily there was a ton of marketing around it. It just became synonymous with the way you drank coffee was to drink this kind of coffee. And so, when you in the beginning, when you start to push the narrative of what this coffee means and what it's about, that narrative becomes the seed for what grows in the consuming end of things. People just get the last little bit of that message, and it has to resonate with them. And I'm curious what you feel is the most helpful way to open people up in their perception of coffee, where maybe they've got some understanding of coffee that's not exactly right, or they're a little bit scared of trying something new, or whatever it is. How have you found it most helpful to sort of break down these things so that people are more open to trying different kinds of coffees more often?
Hmm. I think it depends on the person that's the owner of the coffee shop. I think for me, one of the experience that I've actually learned from the barista exchange when I did the exchange with Coffee Black is that they offered their first coffee for free, which is a very unique concept. I don't think a lot of
Yeah.
cafes are going to be willing to offer coffee for free to anyone that comes. But I think because people are willing to try as long as they don't feel like they have a lot of stake at it, or like they feel like they're paying for something they're not sure they're even going to like, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it gets easier for people to, I'm not saying give free coffee always and forever, but I think it's a unique approach. It's for you to try to find creative and new ways to try to convince people to try your new product, or to convince people to try something new and to see if they like it. And so I feel like it requires coffee shops to be very creative in their approach in designing new experiences for new consumers, because this has been a trend that is happening for many years. And I don't expect anyone on a click to be like, okay, I want to try very different coffees and I'm going to buy the one that's worth a lot more because it's going to be very new to them. But I think it requires people to find creative ways to get in touch with consumers. And also sometimes it's just conversations. It doesn't mean on the first time they come to the cafe they're going to be willing to try a different coffee. But if they learn
Right.
something new about the coffee, or if they learn something new about what's happening on the producer side, how much effort that's getting in, what different experiments are happening, as long as you're trying to push the knowledge and the experience, not just with the coffee they're drinking, but also just sharing stories and trying to connect with them, I think that's also key. But also trying to find creative ways, like offering the first coffee for free if you're certain they're going to like it and it's a top-notch coffee, and they're sure they're going to have another couple of coffees in the next few days, and it would be a great return. But also,
Yeah.
like I said, it's creative ways, and also it's not just the commodity, but the story and the identity that you attach with the coffee that you're selling.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's a great concept, removing the risk, because people are risk averse. And you put yourself in the position of the consumer, and that's a great place to start because you're making decisions that are empathetic to their experience. And sometimes we can forget about what it's like to be a consumer in our own coffee shops, so that we try to push something on them because it is a good thing to do, but to them it doesn't come across that it's a good thing. It almost comes across as pushy. uh, so I love the idea of removing the risk because it communicates so much about, you know we're so excited about this that we're willing to eat the cost of this in order for you to have it, even if you don't like it. But if you give people a lot of opportunity, they might actually find their favorite coffee and purchase it all the time. You're not trying to get people to just not have one coffee that they love for the rest of their life. That's fine. That's actually better. It seems like that's better for, like, if they love Ethiopian coffee and they always buy Ethiopian coffee, that's good for the farmer. So it's just, how do they know unless they try it? Unless you've given them the opportunity. And so and that kind of speaks back to what you're talking about with the work of the IWCA and giving access and opportunity. So now there's a lot more opportunity for the optimal trade profession, and roasteries and cafes and things that I'm sure that this trip with Coffee Black had opened your eyes even further, because now you're stateside here in the U.S. doing work. I know you also did some work with Nosa Familia when you were here as well. Um, how did that serve to evolve your understanding even more, and what kind of things do you think you're going to be processing in the coming days, now that you're back?
I think one of the main things that I learned was how important community is, how important fostering community is in the coffee industry. I think it has come natural to me in the coffee industry to consider coffee as a communal thing, because traditional coffee ceremony requires that you have a couple of people in your house that you're able to serve, your friends or family. And so I've always understood that aspect of it, but also never thought that it would make sense commercially with people that you don't know, with people that are not your family or your friend. But now I'm understanding that it is important to grow your community in coffee. And it doesn't just have to be coffee, it could be coffee with other things. For example, the approach that Coffee Black uses is coffee and music, and providing a space for people to be able to share their music, share their poetry or whatnot in a space, but also enjoy a cup of coffee. Back here, the in Ethiopia, it's not the traditional coffee ceremony is not centered around coffee as a drink, but also the community that comes with it. And so it adds value. I feel like just with, for example, the new valuation of the SCA includes the physical aspect of the coffee, but also what it's contributing to the environment, what it's contributing to people, what other aspects and values it has. And so it creates a narrative that you're not just paying for the coffee, but also you're paying for the experience that you're having with the coffee. And creating that community around coffee, I feel like is valuable to be able to connect and to communicate your ideas more easily, and also have people be convinced and understanding that, oh, wait, I'm not just paying to get caffeinated, but also there's so much more to this. There's so much more to the experience. And so I feel like
Yeah.
one of the best things that I've learned is that creating your own coffee community in the coffee industry helps you get further. And I also appreciate the work they do in trying to increase. So people fight over a certain sector of the coffee industry, like the specialty coffee industry. There are people that are already willing to buy coffee and be more interested in the coffee industry, but they're also looking into creating new segments in the coffee industry. Whereas previously there was very little amount of Black African Americans in the coffee industry that were consuming coffee, but now it's a growing industry because they're willing to turn their eye to creating new segments in the coffee industry, and
Yeah.
also be creative in finding new segments in the coffee industry. You don't always have to like fight over the one that's there, and fight in your marketing, fight in trying to get your values across as a company to a certain consumer base that's already there, but also try to look and try to find new ways and new parts of the coffee industry that you're able to communicate your message to. That's one of the
Mm.
things that I've learned. And it was interesting to see the roasting side. We also had an opportunity to visit Black and White Coffee Roasters in North
Yeah.
Carolina. So I had an opportunity to see the roasting side as well. But also in Portland, being able to work with and experience the roasting in the cafe side with Nusa Familia also helped me to experience what it looks like, and how to make a business sense in the coffee industry.
Yeah.
It's not just the artistic side that I'm most curious about, but also the business aspect of it. What does your supply look like? How do you build the relationships with your coffee suppliers? They actually also use a relationship model where they um, buy coffee from certain people in the coffee industry, and they don't change suppliers. So they work with them throughout the years, even when the prices are going high, even when the prices are going low. So they're committed to working with certain type of farmers, which is something that
Yeah.
I've also learned. To create a connection, create your people, create people, um, partnerships that you're willing to sustain long term for the benefit of both the consumer, the importer, but also the producer, because it's a risk when price is high and when prices are low for both the consumer and the producer. And so being able to create this kind of relationship is key. And also just creating community again with Nusa Familia, with the different cafes that they have. They're very unique. They're tailored to the people that are within that environment, tailored to people that want a different kind of space, a different kind of experience. And also, I think that's something that I've found as a common ground between creating your own community and reflecting what the community needs out of you and not trying to push your opinions on people. I think that's also something that I've learned.
That's wonderful. I love it. It feels like it comes back to that idea of when you want a customer to be open to different kinds of coffee, it's also true that you need to be open to all people, and these different segments they're customers waiting to become customers and enjoy coffee just like those who have been marketed to endlessly for decades. And it's like the same thing applies. And when you have these relationships and community along with an evolving coffee industry that is all about mutuality, it feels like it's truly sustainable. Like relationship is at the heart of sustainability. um, most of the time, like there's other systems you can use for the environment that we need, but if it's not based on relationships, it doesn't feel like any of the efforts that you put towards sustainability could actually work long term.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bimlak, I thank you so much for being here on the show. This has really been a fascinating conversation, and I'm really grateful for the work that you do and how you have just thrown yourself into this industry and been a great example to so many. Really happy to see this recent trip, and no doubt it's going to produce amazing fruit continually afterwards. So, where can we just kind of stay in touch with you and continue to follow your journey in coffee?
Thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it, and it's been a great opportunity to learn. You can find me on Instagram at Humans of Coffee. That's where I share my coffee content. I try to share informational reels and informational posts with people to understand more about what the production side of coffee looks like, what the producing country's perspective in coffee look like, but also to create more access and democratize access to coffee information and education to people that don't have the opportunity to learn. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. That was a definite eye opener in terms of the ways that we can be pursuing relationships based on trust, based on creating a sustainable future for all people involved in the trade of coffee. And grateful for the kind of projects and communication and the influence that Beamlak has been having on the industry and in the industry. And it's just starting. There's going to be way more that you're going to want to stay tuned with. To do that, you want to reach out or just follow Humans of Coffee. It's basically all just separated by underscore, humans underscore of coffee. So the Humans of Coffee on Instagram is where you can follow Bumluck and her journeys, her perspectives on pursuing equity based systems and relationships in specialty coffee between farmers and consumers. So, huge thank you to Bumluck for being on the show and all you do. We are grateful for your wisdom and insights and wish you all the best. So, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback about today's episode, you can always go to keystotheshop.com and reach out on the contact form. You can email Chris at keystotheshop.com, or you can DM on Instagram. And if you're not following Keys to the Shop on Instagram, I would encourage you at Keys to the Shop. Now, one of the things that we really want to let you know is there is a world of difference between a coffee shop that is just kind of thrown together and one that is created with intentionality and with a drive for something unique. And one of the most unique things you can do in your cafe is put a lot of thought into the textural elements, the foundation of surfaces and flooring and things like that. I mean, you don't really think about it too much, but it is literally the foundation of your business in a lot of ways. So I am so glad to let you know there is somebody out there that's doing great work in this area for all of your hard surface needs, tile and stone work for your cafe. Arto Brick. You can find them on arto.com, but the best place to be tuned into what Arto does to help you create unique spaces with tile, stonework, and hard surfaces is at Arto Brick on Instagram. Reach out to Armin. We have an episode with Armin coming up, so you're going to want to definitely check that out. He's one of the owners of Arto Brick, founded by his father way back when, and it is an artisanal driven company that is all about creating these unique and special surfaces and elements in spaces, creating wonderful spaces. So at Arto Brick, reach out to Armin and say hello. Tell him Chris sent you from Keys to the Shop. And I think you're going to be so impressed with the work that they do. It's so beautiful. I really enjoy having them as a sponsor of the show, especially because it's kind of a subject near and dear to my heart. So great. Go send them your love over at Arto Brick on Instagram. And with that, that is the end of our show, everyone. I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to join the show as usual. Thanks for the support. Subscribe, share, have an awesome day. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.